What if Cersei Lannister became a good person? So there are certain stories that always felt ripe for the exploration of a good bad guy or a bad good guy scenario. And I feel like Cersei is one of those, especially since her story is so defined by a quest for power. So what if Cersei decided that she wanted to use that ambition for good? Well, first things first, it's probably going to take something pretty big to turn Cersei into a good person. Maybe some kind of near-death experience or something that happens after Tommen dies that just kind of breaks her and turns her perspective upside down. And then that means that her core motivation shifts from just plain old power to a desire for stability for her and her children. Even if they're gone, protecting her legacy, being queen of a whole and thriving Westeros instead of a broken and fractured one. At first though, she's still going to be a controversial pick for the Iron Throne. I don't think she suddenly becomes benevolent and everyone cheers. In fact, most people are probably still going to resist her, least at first. You've got Jaime, who's been wandering around wearing a white cloak for half a season, swearing off violence and trying to become a better man. And then you've got Tyrion, who spent several seasons openly criticizing his sister and trying to convince other people to see her as the monster he knew she was. But slowly, because Cersei's not dumb and she's really good at politics, she wins them back over. And I think it'd be really interesting to explore her relationships with them under these circumstances. Especially with Tyrion, who has spent most of his life up until this point trying to escape the Lannister name. And now, here it is thrust upon him again. Because his father and older brother are both dead, and he is the only Lannister left of any importance. But in this telling, maybe seeing his sister turned a new leaf gives him a new appreciation for their family and the possibility of doing good under the Lannister banner. Anyway, back to Cersei. Her early reign is probably marked by a lot of apprehension and distrust, but also curiosity, because what exactly is a good Cersei going to do with all that power? Well, we quickly find out. Because Cersei is smart and ambitious, she's going to focus on policy and people, which aren't things that most rulers actually put a whole lot of attention into, at least not at first. She's going to be exceptionally hands-on as a ruler, touring the Seven Kingdoms and seeing what needs fixed. And thanks to her intimate knowledge of the levers of power in the realm, she gets things done quickly. We're talking major infrastructure projects to rebuild King's Landing, solving social problems like widespread poverty or disease, aggressive land reform to replace the feudal system with something more equitable, all the while using her innate ruthlessness to cut through all the red tape and corruption that has hamstrung every previous attempt at progress. Because the thing about Cersei is that when she wants something, she takes it and she doesn't care who she hurts in the process. But normally that's coupled with an ego and desire for personal vengeance. But in this telling, it's all focused in one place, the good of the realm. And she makes those around her, including Jaime and Tyrion, swear fealty to that goal, and to her. And if anyone tries to get in her way, or stand against her, well, she can easily turn that ruthlessness and cunning to personal vendetta. Now, before too long, Cersei is making waves far beyond the borders of Westeros. Remember that scene where Cersei is sitting on the Iron Throne, and Varys tells her that there has been a dragon sighting in the distance? Well, what if instead of reacting with fear and mistrust, Cersei saw an opportunity to meet this Daenerys Targaryen person halfway, and forge an alliance to stabilize the continent and remake it in their image? Suddenly, the prospect of Cersei reaching out to former enemies like House Martell in Dorne or even Daenerys across the sea is both sides have something to gain, and neither side has anything to lose. And if anyone tries to stand in the way of Cersei's foreign policy goals, well, she can call upon that new Dragonfire to make an example of them. But let us fast forward a bit because Cersei's impact goes far beyond the usual scope of a TV show. For example, in the show's timeline, Margaery Tyrell ends up getting burned at the stake for heresy. But in this timeline, Cersei ends up calling the High Sparrow's bluff early and dismantling the Faith Militant before they become a serious threat, which means no trial for Margaery and maybe a full pardon, an apology from Cersei, as a gesture of goodwill. Or how Sansa, in the books, ends up getting married to Ramsay Bolton, which is horrific and terrible. But in this timeline, no. Cersei's influence over Littlefinger prevents that union and instead puts Sansa in a position to secure the North as an independent kingdom under her own rule, something that Cersei knows will benefit everyone in the long run. But above all else, Cersei is a pragmatist, and she understands that for all of her successes, she's still living in a world that hasn't changed all that much. And she knows that the biggest threats to Westeros as a whole still lie beyond the wall. In this timeline, we do want to have a Daenerys who sacks King's Landing because A, she never took the Iron Throne in the first place, and B, she is either dead or imprisoned thanks to Cersei's interference. And that means no Battle of the Bells and no burning of King's Landing. But it also means that the Night King is still out there and the wall is still standing. But a united, benevolent Westeros prepared for winter is a much more coordinated effort than the collection of squabbling kingdoms we see in the show. and Cersei is the perfect person to head such an effort. She's smart enough to formulate the strategy, ruthless enough to carry it out, and respected enough to rally everyone behind her cause. While it is likely that the forces of darkness would still try to strike at the wall or infiltrate the north, I like to imagine that Cersei is able to hold them off for as long as she's alive, proving herself a worthy leader and earning the respect and gratitude of her people. And speaking of respect, Cersei's relationship with Jaime is a fascinating one in this timeline. If she becomes a good ruler, the prospect of Jaime becoming Lord Commander of the Kingsguard suddenly becomes a lot less appealing. Although maybe he could become something like Lord Commander of the whole realm. That sounds cool. But what if instead of dying for Cersei, Jaime dies with Cersei? What if during one of Cersei's many tours of the realm, she and Jaime get caught up in some kind of assassination attempt, and both get gravely wounded? Jaime bleeds out in her arms, and then Cersei makes a bargain with the gods to save her own life, vowing to live it for him. And when Jaime learns that she made that bargain, he finally lets go and moves on to the afterlife, allowing Cersei to return to King's Landing and rule for many years to come, although certainly a diminished person. Anyway, for however many years Cersei is able to sit on the Iron Throne, she proves herself an effective and beloved ruler, building a legacy that overshadows her past mistakes and earns her a place in the history books. Then eventually when she dies, hopefully in a peaceful way, she passes the mantle to someone like Tyrion, or even Gendry, knowing that she has helped make Westeros a better place and set it up for future generations to thrive. In the end, Cersei's story is one that's all about change. Because honestly, nothing in her life changes more drastically than if she became a good person. I think she's a prime example of someone who could have gone either way, but ultimately didn't. And that's why exploring that possibility is so fun. Thanks for watching.